That's what makes ad tech work so well is proximity. It's like proximity in the sense of targeting, data extraction, verification. If you have a user, you have to know what the user's behaviors are, whether it's like what it's an ad tech company like ours, or whether you're actually targeting someone and understand their purchase behaviors. Now, like, that's the only way you're going to get it is by way of multiple sources that are going to be able to verify and attribute that to different sources, right? Which is obviously what you guys do.
It seems like we're headed to a world where, like the situation you laid out before, where you go to a creator and ask them to do like share a story campaign, they'll just tell them to onboard to Daisy and do it through there. It just like makes life so much easier, and the payment goes through so much faster.
People get obsessed with like a tech and then try to like fit it into somewhere else. That's actually totally the wrong way to approach a problem, in my opinion. It's like you have this problem and you're trying to attack it from every angle possible, and then you're like, oh, like zk-TLS fits in, or like, oh, stables fit in.
Okay, what if we actually figured out a mechanism where we could be the first creator-powered ad network and do everything that you do with influencers in an automated, programmatic way, the same that you're doing performance ads, which is like paid ads?
This is the Rubicon podcast.
Okay,
with Ray from Daisy. We've got probably some clips that they'll take out of context from the beginning about believing early, but Ray is the founder of Daisy, definitely one of our flagship partners that Hirsch is known for a long time at this point, and really an early adopter and sort of visualizer of the power of zk-TLS. And I'm sure we'll talk about opacity, the partnership and stuff like that. But for me, the really impressive thing is the growth, the lower CPC rates, connecting brands directly to influencers, the viral flywheel, like sort of network effects that you get, right? I think that impressed me the most. I don't know, Ray, is there anything else that you want to add about yourself before we dig in? I don't want to speak for you.
Well, first of all, David and Hirsch, thanks for having me. It was about a year and a half ago that I met Hirsch and Heron, and not knowing anything about zk-TLS, which I know we're going to get to later, but understanding kind of the ad tech ecosystem and understand some of the gaps. I think it was pretty obvious, right out of the gate, like what we could do with what Opacity was building, and at that point it was just to see them an idea for Daisy, and for Hirsch and for Aaron to really understand and gravitate towards it, not just from a partnership perspective with Opacity, but just understanding what it could do in the landscape of just Web3 and Web3 builders, and so. And that was really exciting because that was almost like validation. It was day one when I met Hirsch. But I'm the founder CEO of Daisy. Started this company about officially post meeting Hirsch. Officially launched it in like March of last year. And our first investor was a shared investor that we have with Opacity, who's also a big believer in the space, Sal over at EV3. But we started this journey, March of last year, and I launched the product in July of last year. So it's only been a year since we launched the product officially. I could, go into detail about what we're doing, what we're building, but it's just awesome to be here and love to dig in with you guys.
Yeah. Definitely want to hear about the actual product itself. It's like, this is actually like the number one question I get is like, people really are curious to learn about how Daisy works, but I guess actually taking a step back, I'd love to dig into like your background actually before founding Daisy, and like where all your work history before, and like what markets you have expertise in. Like what is the story before like being a founder of Daisy?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it is kind of why I'm building Daisy, because I feel like I've had this passion for disrupting fan engagement early on in 2012. When I built a company called Upfront. It was a first of its kind subscription-based mobile app that allowed creators to monetize their premium content behind a paywall. So we worked with deadmau5, and that was our first creator, which is obviously huge back in 2012 when everything was EDM'd. Got to know deadmau5 and also his manager, Dean. So when you saw a lot of the stuff that happened with deadmau5 and the management getting into Web3, he did some really incredible projects. That I had to do with the fact that we introduced them to Web3 early on as well because of my relationship with them. And so from there, I just had this whole passion of just disintermediation between fan and creator. In that case, it was music creator. And then it kind of dovetailed into some other experiences. I still am an advisor for a company called Audius, which is considered like the largest decentralized platform from a active user perspective, like 7 million, I believe, monthly active users. But it's just a decentralized music streaming protocol. I joined them as an advisor in like 2018 when it was like a 5-page deck, and helped them really onboard creators because I knew some of these creators like Deadmau5, like Skrillex, that were looking for ways to kind of reinvent and reimagine the way distribution was happening. I think it's their case for music, but also just getting closer to their fans and creating a way to get direct to their fans. And then I spent some time at Parapop, which I was the chief product officer and one of the founding members there, and took that to 0 to 1 mainly because there was the right timing where I took it from like more fan engagement to like actual audience engagement specific to creators. And this was social media creators. But that was my first foray into like really getting into this landscape of like leveraging these large scale profiles and figure out ways to actually have effectiveness around your brand campaigns or your advertising campaigns by leveraging these creators. And that was 2020, 2021, which led me to essentially seeing some of those gaps with all that experience and figuring out the best ways to leverage Web3 tech to build Daisy and to be able to create a new model or a new way to do social advertising, social commerce. But that was my backstory, which led me to building Daisy.
In crypto right now, there's a lot of chatter around like crypto being good for creators and like alternative revenue streams for creators. But so I want to dig into like the gaps a bit more. Is like, how useful do you think like creator coins or a lot of like the hot narratives around getting creators outside of Daisy into crypto? Uh, do you think they actually solve a problem for creators? Like, what is like the big issue that creators have? Like, what is the painkiller that they're looking for?
Well, if you look at, I'll use Deadmau5 as an example because he has taken shots on goal to solve a lot of the problems that music creators have, and let's just say music creators, which he did NFT drops. He's done things where it's tied smart contracts into access and create like these premium fan experiences. He's been involved with like virtual worlds, metaverse, billions different things, but this has all been to help him engage with his audience. Also being and find ways to just get closer to his fans, right? So I think that there's been this concept of ownership for a while as well. And I think that in music specifically, I think it will be harder and harder. It's hard to actually disrupt it in a way where ownership will actually transfer into some sort of Web3 framework. I think at the end of the day, it does come with like being able to get closer to your audience and be able to understand your audience and be able to understand, like, because of the fact they have lack of data, because they have access, they get an email list, maybe from their label, and they could retarget them, and they could actually find ways to actually get closer to them to be able to sell tickets. It's still mind-boggling that whether it's Deadmau5 or Bruno Mars, whoever it is, has to spend marketing dollars to retarget to the fans that just went to their show a year ago, and has no idea whether they spent the premium package, the VIP package, or they bought the seats that were like $500 there, but they were worth 300. So it's because it's a lack of information for them. So I think there's just been promise of Web3 of like figuring out ways to create more of a system where I can understand my audience and my fans better, whether you're Bruno Mars, Deadmau5, or whether you're whether you're Cadillac, it's the same thing. I think it's just harder and harder to understand. And there's this reason why there's this redistribution of marketing dollars that happens every year to market to your same audience. And so I feel like the promise is still there. I think there's some solutions out there that are still solving that. But I think that's the reason why you get a lot of brands also, and also creators that are leaning in on the tech, because it's exactly how they could potentially get more attribution, more data, more ways of retargeting to an audience that they already own.
Before we shift gears into Daisy, did want to give David the opportunity to ask any questions here, but what you just described, I feel like is like the greatest bull case for crypto that people have been looking for, because it's nothing to do with DeFi or speculation. It's just if you build open software systems, you can own your own audience and have a direct relationship with them. Whereas, like if you're making a TV show and people are watching it through like Netflix, for example, it's like the actual company behind it doesn't have that information, right? And so it's the fact that there's these big media companies looking for solutions like that. It's like I'm surprised more people in crypto don't care about it. But David, any questions?
No, I think we're going to talk about a lot of stuff that I wanted to hear about from Ray, like the stuff that I think is super interesting naturally as we get into Daisy. because again, like all the bangers, at least from my perspective as like the go-to-market sales guy, it's like ZKTLS and Opacity, like we're an unlock, but in a lot of ways, it's sort of the most boring part of the business, right? Like it's just this data thing, right? And it's sort of what you do with it that makes it interesting. And whether you want to call it like pickaxes and shovels or like open systems, there's a lot of different framings that work for it. But I'm really excited to talk to you, Ray, more about like how that process goes through your head. Like what happens when you see ZKTLS and with your own expertise, because that's always like what I'm trying to get more of in the space. And we talked about this with EV3 guys. We've talked about this um with the finality guys as well. It's like I think especially in crypto, and actually if you have a take on this, I'd be curious to hear your take, is like people get obsessed with like a tech and then try to like fit it into somewhere else. Right. And that's actually totally the wrong way to approach a problem, in my opinion. It's like you have this problem and you're trying to attack it from every angle possible. And then you're like, oh, like ZKTLS fits in, or like, oh, stables fit in. Right. So I think sharing a little bit of that as you talk about Daisy and framing, I think is going to be super interesting. One, just because I think it's interesting. But two, I think this is like helpful for people that are probably watching the podcast and thinking like going at it backwards, right? Like, oh, ZKTLS is cool. What can I do with it? Versus I'm obsessed with this problem. Does ZKTLS help or not? Does crypto help or not?
Well, I think because what I just outlined was like the problem areas that I've heard from like large scale creators and large scale IP holders. And I've had similar conversation with like the Warner Brothers of the world, and like it still again blows my mind that Warner Brothers cannot understand who their viewers are that watch Batman in their freaking own in theaters and also on Netflix, but they can't. That's it, because or they don't get that information, And so like, and same with Harry Potter, right? Maybe they get some information when people actually from ticket sales, but when they license it and distribute it to like these streaming platforms, like they just don't know who's watching it after it's been streamed. And so I think there's just this walled garden, as you guys know, like with these platforms, that it's very hard to extract, any sort of data set that's going to help them retarget. Especially, there's so many touch points of a Harry Potter fan, because they're hidden, like they're consuming, they're buying, they're going to maybe their theme parks. Like there's so many touch points on that fan. So I think when it comes to what you were saying, David, is that it really comes down to the problem. I think first as a builder. And so we know that there's a massive problem in terms of audience segmentation, audience retargeting. And that's what makes ad tech work so well, is proximity. It's like proximity in the sense of targeting, data extraction, verification. I mean, I know I'm using all the buzzwords for CKTLS, but that is actually what makes not just ad tech work, it makes any consumer. If you have a user, like you have to know what the user's behaviors are and whether it's like what it's an ad tech company like ours, or whether you're actually targeting someone that understand their purchase behaviors or intent. Like that's the only way you're going to get it, is by way of multiple sources that are going to be able to verify and attribute that to different sources, right? Which is obviously what you guys do. I could get into the other stuff, but like that, I think it goes to the problem. And I look at and I know that David, you said that maybe Opacity has this like unlock, and it's a tool, but it's a tool that I look at the same way. When you're building on these platforms, you have to be able to figure out ways to have a wallet provider. You have to be able to have a payment system. It's the same thing with ZKTLS. You need to have this component in order for all those things I just talked about to work, because that's a lifeblood of what makes targeting and retargeting happen. I just don't see any other way of actually understanding your audience without it.
Yeah, me and Hirsch were talking about a different brand actually just this morning. I was like, they're more sort of crypto native without putting names out there, and they're like, they're sort of thinking like, what's the pitch? And like the more I thought about it, I'm like, it has nothing to do with crypto actually. Like sure, they're a crypto native brand, but like who cares? They've got YouTube animations, they've got sales in, well, RIP Toys R Us, but sales on Amazon or whatever it may be, right? And it's like, it doesn't matter where you started, you've still got this problem because the rest of the world still functions this other way. So I was like, oh, I'm in my own head, like I went through this whole thing where like I am massively overcomplicating this. They have the exact same problems Warner Brothers and Harry Potter has. They have the same problems Skrillex has. So like to your point, it's like sometimes we think about this stuff like, oh, what's the crypto pitch, or like, oh, what's the Web 2 pitch, and it's like it should kind of be the same thing, I think. And that's when I get like excited when the pitch is the same, because that means it really resonates everywhere, as most things should, versus people who have like a crypto pitch for crypto people and then they get mad that there's not enough adoption. I'm like, well, that's your fucking fault, asshole. Like that's not mine. Like me and Ray are out here in church are doing stuff that helps everyone.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think I don't mean to be like name dropping a bunch of people, but like I do think that there is an element where people feel like there's a sexiness factor of like naming big creators. That's why I think a lot of people lean on music in Web3 for some reason, because it just seems to have a lot of awareness when you do something in Web3, or with music. But it doesn't matter if that consumer is just like an average Joe or Jane that actually you deliver something valuable to the product, whether it's a social app or whether it's like, it could be anything. It could be something that's a content creation app. It doesn't have to be a Dead Mouse or a Skrillex or a Warner Brothers. It's like if you're a builder, you still need to know your audience. And I think that's one of the things that is so hard, because targeting and retargeting is one of the hardest things to do, not just with advertising, but like with people to think about like the sickness of an app. Like the only way you're going to be able to retarget effectively is to understand that user, as opposed to just, you can understand like certain clicks and certain things that they do in the app. But the more that you understand the user, again, in this case, it's for us, it's more about the consumer, and the creator. But a consumer is actually the most important thing. Data extraction around consumers is the only way I think you can make an app successful.
Yeah, this is might be a good segue into actually Daisy too, where I think it'd be helpful for everyone to just give like a brief summary of Daisy, like who the target user base is, and like what the go to market was like. Because it's like, you say you're an ad tech company, but it's very unique in terms of the history of technology companies around advertising.
Kind of goes back to my origin or background. You're asking Hirsch, like, we just started seeing some of the gaps, and I know you guys have met some people on our team, and like, you kind of taken that 30 years of like influencer marketing experience. And I think there's been this pattern, especially with marketing and martech, of and influencers, is creating like SaaS platforms or an agency. I think there's like martech that self-serve, and there's agencies that service that market. And I think a lot of it had to gear, especially even now, people are starting to think about that as like more of content creation. And I think creators and promotion. So I feel like influencers are really good at content creation, and they're really good at promotion, especially if they have a large followers, right? Or a large base, and influence. Now, the proxy for success in 2020, 2021 was feed posts. How many followers you had, it would convert. That's why people, with influencers, big followers would actually crush it, because they would drive so much sales, so down funnel attribution. And then it changed. TikTok changed the entire landscape of that, because now the proxy for success became their FYP, before your page, and everything had to do with like interest, engagement, all that stuff that is targeted to the right targets, right? That changed. And so with that, we started like thinking about Daisy in a different way, or influencer marketing in a different way with Daisy. And we said, okay, what if we actually figured out a mechanism where we could be the first creator powered ad network and do everything that you do with influencers in an automated, programmatic way, the same that you're doing performance ads, which is like paid ads. And that's where the bulk of the budget is. Influencer budget's huge, but performance budgets is like 10 times that. There's a reason why Metas and even Netflix is now are crushing it on ad tech. And so for us, it was about solving this problem of like, how can you make influencer marketing programmatic? And we started going back to one of the fundamental pillars, I think, that makes advertising agencies or advertising businesses successful is engagement. And so we created this engagement loop through the Daisy, where you can actually reward creators on a microtransaction basis. Let's just say $20, $50 for their engagement, which is stuff they already do with their camera off, which is what creators love about Daisy. So liking, sharing, reposting, commenting, and that drives the algorithm. It goes back to, that's what drives the FYP. That's what drives velocity. And that's what makes an organic post go from 1,000 to 50,000 views. So we've just combined influencer marketing, which is promotional based, to like Daisy based influencer marketing, which is distribution. And I think distribution combined with promotion is like, it was this unstoppable force, which then you start getting this like performance metrics as well. So we call it Daisy because we first thought of this term daisy chain. So the idea of sequencing these actions in a way that we could attribute, at someone's engagement, someone's comment, and someone's repost of value, which is something that we're working on with you guys, and be able to understand, okay, well, it not only has a value of X because of their repost, but also has an audience target, and this is what their audience looks like. So then that goes back into this idea of programmatically serving brands with this amplification of their social, whether that's organic or a paid piece of content.
if you're okay with it, could you give us any examples of campaigns that you've done like early on and like what the metrics were on that?
Yeah, we've worked with like over 55 brands to date, which I kind of told a little bit about the history, but like we started this product, or we launched the product in July, and everything that we've done has been word of mouth in terms of our clients. And I would say 30% of those clients are Web3. So, and it was guys like you, Hirsch, and guys like, Sal and other investors that we had. You guys did a great job of just getting like our cold start off the ground, because it was about like getting some of the clients that really believed in us, and that obviously helped with warm leads. But when we started launching this with whether it's a Web3 brand that wants to migrate from X potentially to create a net new audience, a community on TikTok and or Instagram. We worked with a lot of those brands. It could be Demo, Nadix, Daylight. There's a few others there. Helium, and or it could be like a Web2 consumer brand. And this is probably our sweet spot. Is anyone that wants to drive GMV and return on ad spend, which is a very it's pretty much like that North Star metric that everybody has, is their ROAS, as an e-commerce brand. So whether it's Snow, whether it's like Natum, which is they're all like 100 million plus revenue brands. We work with those segments kind of like are the same when it comes to the mechanics. So what we've seen in most of these campaigns is that we're delivering on performance metrics, which is, cost per view, it's cost per click. It could be return on ad spend ratio, and also GMV. So we average anywhere between 1 cent to 2 cents roughly through all of our campaigns on a CPV basis. That is, I think if you hit 5 cents, that's a good day. So we're hitting 1 to 2 cents, and we're actually doing some deals where we're guaranteeing some volume on views on a fixed rate, because we know we can hit every time. And then on a CPC basis, we've gone all the way down to 5 cents, but on average, maybe 25 cents, which is typically on Meta, you'll get like $1. And then ROAS, I think this is where it gets exciting, is like on a return on ad spend, we've seen content that's boosted on Daisy flipped into an ad that's gotten like 7.0 ROAS, which is 7x on their ad spend, which they normally would have gotten 2.4, which is still good on an ad without Daisy. So and then we've seen GMV lifts as well. We've seen posts generate $10,000 to $20,000 of GMV just on Daisy, just on a Daisy boost, a UGC post. So we're starting to optimize for GMV as well.
And how do brands react to those? Because I have like not that much understanding of like the space at all, but the the numbers you're talking about in terms of the change that you can provide because of the intermediated nature of Daisy, that seems like very significant. How do brands usually react when you tell them like the numbers that you guys can get them?
Yeah, favorably. We increased. When we first started this, as you know, like we started just doing some smaller $1,000 boost campaigns, which we still do, and we still love to do it. It just so happens that we're launching our self-serve platform, little alpha, on this podcast this week. And it will be essential. Thank you. Yeah, because of what you just said, because now we could deliver on those results. At the end of the day, ad tech platforms or martech, or however you want to classify us, predictability is everything, right? And so like influencer marketing is probably the least predictable thing you could do on your marketing. It's because it's such a vanity thing. And the fact that we're delivering predictable results is actually a game changer. There's no doubt. And so brands love that because they know their dollars being spent right now, especially with their influencer budgets. So self-serve is going to be able to deliver that and do it automated at small, medium businesses. And then brands just love to just continue to allocate some of their paid marketing budgets to Daisy. So we're seeing this increase of spend going from influencer marketing budgets and marketing teams to performance marketing budgets and marketing teams. And so that's the trend we're seeing. So instead of doing these 1K deals at a time, we're starting to see 50K commitments a month on spend. And this is all within a year because of the results we're able to deliver.
That's absolutely crazy. David, any questions?
Yeah, I mean, this is like the stuff that gets me really excited because there's a few things like if you're not familiar with ad tech, marketing, whatever, and I'm not the guru that Ray is, but the two really interesting points that hit home for me is one, like in most other places, like you see like sort of massive drop-offs on spend, right? And the lower you can start it, it gives you that gap up to actually like capture more of the market. Because the first thing, like advertisers don't think about it as raw dollars as most other departments have to, right? It's like if you have an input output of like a commercial good or something, right? This is like as long as it's more than one, you're going to dump as much money into it as possible, right? So bring down the CPC clicks. I'm sure there's some sort of, nothing's infinite, right? There's some sort of drop off, but it gives you so much more space because people are going to spend more money with you when the CPCs and CB and GMBs and ROAS are better. What does that mean for influencers? I mean, they're going to get more money through Daisy than they're going to get anywhere else. So this is one of those great, like, sort of incentive alignment stories where it's like you disintermediate the market the way Hirsch always said. And in this place, it's not even like you have to pay YouTube to advertise. Although obviously, some people do. It's just disintermediating the data market for it and creating that speed and efficiency that like allows influencers to get paid more. Marketers will spend more, and they've been saying like, oh, like, influencer marketing is the future of all of it. It was like, this is sort of the thing I think in my mind that was missing a lot to like really even like ratchet up the acceleration even further in terms of like how much money people spend on influencers. So those two things combined, like the incentive alignment plus the fact that like marketers are going to spend more, not less when things get cheaper, is just a really interesting sort of flywheel effect on the business side that like gets me really excited about Daisy. And like, obviously Daisy comes up in a lot of my conversations and people ask like, why is it so exciting? I'm like, it's hard to find a business like that. It's hard to find a business where everyone in the entire value chain is excited to use it. And there's enough gas there to create like a venture scale business on the extraction of what you've provided as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you hit on a few things. I mean, uh, and we haven't even got, I mean, we're just getting started, as you guys know. Like one of the things that like brands value this the way that I just articulated, the way you articulate, David. But like we're starting to hear from brands now saying that this is actually reducing my content production budget as well and my seeding budget. I don't have to send product to a bunch of creators. I don't have to create like thousands of videos a month, which some brands do, by the way. It's a playbook. And it's been over $1 million on content creation when I could amplify or even re-amplify, which we've had people do too on Daisy, a post that's been sitting there for a month that performs. And just has it has better results than having like seen a bunch of videos in the market and seeing what produces or what accelerates. So I think these UGC platforms that are out there are great. But I think, and it we could do to content scale. And that is kind of a playbook that a lot of TikTok shop brands are doing. But like, it really comes down to like the effectiveness of the content you currently have that performs, because we could signal that. So one of the things we're doing, another piece of alpha, is that we're going to signal the post before they even boost it on Daisy, and we'll suggest the post that they should be boosting, because we'll have that data. We'll verify it through you guys, through your systems, and be able to know that this actually has a velocity curve of X plus one, and boost it. And this is how much you should spend. Then we just made their jobs super easy. All they got to do is sign up and they put the budget in. The other thing that you also mentioned, David, is that I think there's two. I mentioned proximity and attribution as like some of the two real. I think the biggest challenges. We kind of touch on engagement, but like if you think about proximity, it is data. It is about the audience. It is about maybe purchase intent, data as well, because you could. I know you guys could you track and data extract like transaction history, purchase behavior, stuff like that. That's what makes, I think, proximity even better and stronger, which we'll go over time, because then the targeting of those boosters, as to say, are going to be even better. But then we get to their audience as well, which is going to be becoming very valuable. When you think of attribution, the attribution is like one of the biggest problems people have with like, how do you attribute success on these platforms to the creator because the creators never get credit for it. They never get credit for driving value because they're the top of funnel. And so we're saying, no, we could actually say, because of using leveraging ZKTLS and being able to use Daisy, that we're starting to see this go downstream. And now we can start validating, verifying real attribution, real measurement. And every single brand is looking for that. So this is what I'm saying. Like this is like early innings for us. And I think that's why you hear my voice. But I get excited about the future of Daisy and also the partnership with Opacity, because we're just getting started.
Yeah, this is something, I don't know, maybe a bit of a detour here, but I want to make sure that we talk about it because it's um what's the name of the AI company? Is it Cluely? It's Cluely, right? That's sort of making waves right now. Hirsch, did I have that right?
Yeah, it's like the cheating AI one.
Yeah, it's a cheating AI, and like it just strikes me that there's interesting ways to like sort of go about this problem because I mean, they're doing rage baiting and they're doing all this stuff, and I'm still on the fence. I don't know how much you've been following the story already, but like, there's a couple interesting things going on here. The first one is they're basically just going after distributions first. They spent like I think $500,000 on interns to like seed content, basically, which like okay, like it's coming across my feed, but I the comments are just brutal. They're like, "This thing doesn't work. Like, why are you spamming my page?" And like the connection with the audience, just I don't know. There's something missing there. And listen, this might work, and maybe this is the new playbook, and everyone just spends 500 grand on interns until AI can replace them. But I do get the sense that like there's multiple things happening in parallel here, right? Where there's all these people getting interested in learning how to seed content creation, but for my money, I don't think that's as clean as Daisy and like sort of professionalizing in some ways the influencer marketing world because I get a lot of TikToks obviously on like marketing content and I got this funny skit where it's like you know that like the Google Ads managers like they're getting grilled on like ROAS and GMV and all this stuff and then the influencer marketing managers like we signed a deal, impressions are good, like brand awareness feels up. Like they just don't get pressured with the same questions, but now that you can, I think they probably will. I don't know if you have any thoughts on like sort of the different directions like the influencer marketing world is headed right now. But I think for most of our audience, a lot of them are consumer app builders. Would be curious to hear your thoughts on just like where all this stuff is headed and what's useful and what's not.
I think there's a few ways to answer that. I think if you think about the content creation side of it, I do think AI, generative AI, will produce a lot of UGC videos and these profiles. It will be harder and harder. It is now to distinguish between like what's real and what's not. But I think that's okay because I think the message is whether it's produced in the studio, whether it's produced through AI, it's about just creating a message around it. I think that will serve us, by the way, because we kind of fit into the amplification distribution side, not the production side. So I think one of the challenges that brands have right now when we talk to them is I don't have a content strategy in place, or about to produce a bunch of content. That's going to change because now there's tools that can generate content, generative tools, and that could again will help us. I see a trend there. I do think that one of that aspect of it is very important. I do see, and I don't know if this is going to be addressing what you're pointing out directly, but like I still look at like stable coins. I look at wallets. I look at us as more like a neobanking system as well. As much as I see, it's not just about the influencer marketing aspect of it. It's about what can you do with all these tools that are available to you that are, the Opacity SDK, a Privy wallet. Like this is what builders should be thinking about. And I lived through the tail end of like the time when you could actually integrate like a checkout system on a website. And so like so that I look at that like a cart, like it's like you now have these tools to become a superpower on your own right with your own product. And this is the reason why we built on Web2 rails. We were trying to build protocol. We were trying to like figure out the protocol, then build product later. We were actually building protocol on Web2 rails and leverage people like Opacity and Privy on the wallet side to actually integrate into our workflows. And that's key to, I think that's key to success. And there's I mean, because of guys like you, but also other companies, they make it so easy now to integrate third-party applications into their core experience. So I do think they're going to see more of that trend as well, not just with us, but like with not just our category. Hopefully, like a lot of people, Web2 founders are out there, potentially listening to this and saying, I could build Web2 apps, but look at some of the underlying tech and solutions out there that could supercharge success by integrating their SDKs. And I don't think people are that message is not really that clear to people. I think there are people who think you're either a Web2 builder or you're a Web3 builder. You're not like a Web2 builder and then thinking about the Web3 components that could fit in to make this very successful. And that's how we're thinking about it.
Yeah, I came back from Tech Week. Well, first off, I was like, oh, there's terrible builders everywhere. I thought it was just crypto founders that had terrible ideas, but it turns out it's happening in AI everywhere else too. But the other thing that really struck me is like the people who sort of get both, right? Like it's that attack it from the problem perspective instead of trying to like shimmy in tech, right? It's like I saw so many AI founders like it's AI for X, AI for Y, and I'm like, I get the whole chat GPT rapper meme thing now. Because like this, like this is not a product. This is not a business. This is just you guys like trying to raise money, which, fine, go off, cake. I don't really care. It's not for me. But the people who understand the tools necessary and where to take what and how to use it effectively, from a first principles perspective, like these seem like the clear winners to me. And whenever I talk to people now about like, oh, should I build this here? Should I build this there? I'm like, I don't know. It's your product. Think about it from the beginning and think about, is this helpful to the user? Does this make a better product experience? Is this stickiness? Is this revenue? Like what's the point of this? Don't just throw it in there because you think someone else told you should. Yeah, it's my encouragement.
On that topic, so you mentioned stable coins. Uh, it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you're bullish on stable coins, especially with respect to Daisy. Like, what is the value add there from your perspective, and like what it can bring to creators that you have?
So we've been fortunate where we've had success on like one of our value propositions is actually instant or within 24 hours payouts to creators. And that was important because creators typically get paid in 90 days. When we registered this company, it was Daisy Pay. And I think it's because we wanted payments to be synonymous to paying creators, because that's one of the biggest problems that creators have is getting paid and chasing out payment. There's a reason why if you called a creator right now and you said, hey, would you do this share the story campaign for me? Just a single creator. They would say, sure, I'd love to do it. $2,000. Here's my agent. Here's my lawyer. Let's get a contract drafted. One creator. And because it's going to cost them to do the contract, but more importantly, they know they're going to get paid 90 days later, if paid at all. And so, and that's why the opportunity cost for them is actually 2K versus doing a share the story on Daisy for $50. And the reason why that is because it made 2 clicks of a button to do it, and also for them to get paid same day. We want to even squeeze that gap even more where it's instant, and we want creators to not only be able to get invited, because the way the platform works is that we identify 50 creators, it could be more, 50 creators that want to share the story, comment, share. Within minutes, they respond, like within minutes. So like you'll get people to like share the story, we'll verify it, and then from there we will send the payments. We'll send payments the same day. We want all that to happen within like 30 minutes of when they take that action. We had a creator who was Air One, is this bougie place in Venice. I think they have $20 smoothies or something like that. Great smoothies, by the way. But she says this is feeding into my Air One addiction. She actually said that. She texted it to us. And I'm like, cool, that's awesome. And then she's waiting in line at Air One. 2 days later, she gets a push notification, earned $20 for a comment from Daisy while she's waiting in line at Air One. And she's like, you won't believe this. I'm sitting there and I'm doing this right now. And then she does it again with her camera off, just standing in line at Air One. So but imagine if and we verified it, but imagine if she actually got paid through some sort of stable infrastructure that had a debit card backing to it, while she was waiting in line, so she could check out and buy her smoothie before she even had to like get to the front of the line. That's what we want. By the way, that woman is now saying that we're paying for her groceries every week. So we went from paying her Air One to now paying her tire director every week. But we want her to use Daisy for those payments, not just for transactional purposes and spending purposes. But we want that to feel that gratification for creators is super important. So Stables, I think, solve some of that. Fees, of course, people talked about that. At scale, I think will be a big thing for us. I think yield could be interesting because we want to share the yield back to the creators. And we actually think creators will convert some of their other balances into Stables for the yield, and then hold their funds inside of Daisy. I mentioned the debit card as well. And then cross border. I think people have been talking about that forever, but we do have international creators, and so it will be highly cost effective for them to convert some of their stables into a local currency. I know some markets are better than others, but that'll be very efficient for them to, like, if they're a Mexican creator and they're based in Mexico City and they did a US brand deal on Daisy, they get paid USDC or USDB or USDG, and then they could convert that to their HSBC bank that's based in Mexico City. And that will be a great experience for them, but they don't get charged like 30% for that conversion. So those are the main reasons why we're doing it.
It seems like we're headed to a world where, like the situation you laid out before, where you go to a creator and ask them to do like share a story campaign, they'll just tell them to onboard to Daisy and do it through there. It just like makes life so much easier and the payment goes through so much faster.
Well, you know, what gets really exciting, and we'll work on this with you guys, is when we start thinking about real time bidding, and then we start like dynamic pricing and value of the creator actions. The only way we could do that is data extraction, you know, verification, um, and like waterfall the prices based on time, based on value, based on we truly become an ad exchange at that point. And I don't think we will hopefully be the first person to ever make creators into an ad exchange. That will be super powerful, which I think there's going to be a lot that we could do together there.
Can you say more? Like, what does it actually look like from the brand perspective or like the creator's perspective? If you have like a more rich exchange.
Yeah, YouTube is probably the best example of like real time bidding or TB systems. Like that, there's a lot of systems out there where they'll go out and auction essentially inventory placement, and they'll have like they'll have a supply side bidding of like, oh, I will take this for 10 cents, I'll take this for 20 cents. I'm not sure if those numbers are right. And then they'll fill it. It's about filling it and then placing it, and then the value goes to the brand. But then if you look at all these people that are involved, um, Sal did an incredible write up on this, by the way. But so I am stealing a little bit of his thesis on this. But I'll give him credit for it. Is that it was it just slices the pie, and then and this is why you're starting to see Roku and Netflix have a fully vertical solution, because they started with the supply side of it, and then now they have the demand side, supply side of the content and the inventory. You know, creators for us are this inventory. And so at some point, the demand side will be like, hey, I want to run this campaign. I would love to. I have this much to spend. You know, like there's something precious I want to try to get. And then we just bid it out. But it fills immediately. But it has to go through a pre-vetted system, attribution, proximity, as we talked about, of like, here are the creators are valued at this, and waterfalls. Here's 20 creators. Didn't want to take it at 20 cents. Waterfall down to 15. Waterfall down to 10. And then fill the inventory, fill demand, and that goes back to also transparency. Those systems right now, zero transparency. You have no idea if they just somehow went to the highest bidder, but there was a lower bidder over here, but they gave it to the highest bidder. So you just paid a premium, and you had no idea you paid a premium. You know, so those are things that we're going to consider down the road. We are going to do down the road.
Yeah, you're gonna get all the DeFi people super excited. It's like you can actually build like kind of like a DeFi exchange. You're hitting a lot of those like ideas.
Yeah, you're right. It's like social capital. Yeah.
Another question I did want to ask is, you guys recently were up on stage at Solana Accelerate, right? We get a lot of chains that come talk to us about like, because they want apps in their ecosystem. I mean, if you feel comfortable sharing, is like when you're going through the process of like picking a chain, what were you thinking about? What was important to you, and like why did you end up choosing Solana?
I think the stablecoin side of it was actually a big piece of it, as far as like the community to support it, but also the dev community was a big part of it. Transaction costs had some factors into it, and I think part of it too was you know, there's been some past experience I've had with Solana, and some very, very favorable ones. So, and just being able to, so that's just me, part of the reason why. But the other thing that we really consider is how large the ecosystem is, because the ecosystem for us, that we want to service Solana builders. And I think that there's a lot of Solana builders out there. So distribution for us as a platform played into that as well. And the other part of that is that a lot of their ecosystem partners are very consumer centric, which also helps us grow as a business. So there's that part of it, and there's definitely, of course, the tech and how comfortable we are, especially around their stablecoin infrastructure. A lot of people, a lot of issuers, a lot of on-ramp, off-ramp providers, they all support Solana. So I think scale was something we considered. I know there's a lot of other chains out there that are fantastic, and but those are the main factors for us, which might be different than for you or for other platforms out there.
The factor for us is people like you. Like I try, it's like it's like founders like yourself who can build consumer like these new 0 to 1 consumer products is really the limiting factor. And so I try not to like push people towards any particular chain. It's like you make that decision that's best for yourself, and we'll get any chain supported. We follow you.
That's great.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
David, any last questions?
I don't know if it's any specific questions. I think a lot of, like, the future of like marketing and distribution whenever we talk, right? And first of all, I appreciate the context, and I appreciate sort of the insights that you always have. I think the exchange stuff gets very interesting, especially, Hirsch and we've been discussing sort of internally different ideas around, what DeFi like sort of means to creators without letting too much of the cat out of the bag, because this is one of those spaces where it's like hyper siloed. And whether that's like, verifying someone to someone, verifying they're making a certain amount of money across different platforms, and really having sort of a better idea of, what an individual person means as a business. I think those things are all going to be really interesting as we sort of go out into the credit world, as we go out into, the exotic derivative product world, because, some of this stuff could be theoretically very helpful, but because of the way the internet functions today, like, at least my sense, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is that, it was built for businesses, LLCs, corporations. It wasn't built for someone who has incredible power and influence just by making videos, right? So like your TikTok shop isn't necessarily connected to your bank account in the way that you'd like it to be to get, take a loan on a house, right? Like revolving credit lines, things that people are very used to in the private wealth management world are not accessible to a lot of these folks who are just, doing numbers on YouTube Shorts. But I think, Daisy, and it's very encouraging to hear that you're thinking about all this stuff, because if influence marketing is the future, which I very much think it is, if I think there's a sort of a new sort of more user-centric internet coming around the other side, that's where probably a lot of the DeFi stuff that's yet to be unlocked is probably coming down the pipeline, right? I always think about sort of untapped sources of demand for financial products, and this one just seems like nothing's a layup in the startup world, but it makes a lot of fucking sense at the very least.
Well, yeah, it blew my mind when I looked up the TAM for social advertising. So the TAM is 2030 is 400 billion, 4.5 billion, sorry. And but then I looked at the TAM for social commerce for 2030, same timeline, 8.5 trillion. And and that there's a reason why Amazon making a bid on TikTok. There's an absolute reason why they're making that bid. And I just know when I talk to brands all the time, it could be a huge brand, it could be a small brand. Like social commerce is where it's going, and everything that you need to do to make social commerce work has to deal with leveraging where things are being consumed, which is influencers, influencer content, EGC, short form, maybe some long form. But like that's why you're seeing this trend, and because consumer behavior is all going on into short form. So not just from a consumption perspective, but from a transactional perspective. So we have to think about it the way that DeFi thinks about it for that very reason, and we will, because it's very hard to do that with creators, because creators are known for being transactional, and we're going to make them transactional, and they want to be transactional, but they don't want to have to create like a 20, 30 or 40 or 60-second TikTok video or Instagram shorts or reels every single time, because they have to turn the camera on and get ready, and the pressure of doing that, the anxiety of doing that. We're changing that, and we're also changing the way that brands distribute their content as well. So that's how I've been treating it, and I think so far the narrative has been working, but just also the product's been working for both brands and for creators alike. And again, like a lot of this stuff from Opacity and ZKTLS is all about how can we become more predictable, in delivering the results. And I think that's critical to our success.
Yeah, I think, for me, a lot of this just really revolves around, choice and user behavior and what it may be, right? Because when you take these ham-fisted approaches like airdrops and stuff that we've seen so far, which are just, I don't know, I'll say it clearly, like massive fucking failures, like great experiments. Glad we did them, but like, please stop, guys. Like we can do so much better, right? It's like the creator on Daisy, like, I think we harp a lot on like their ability to say yes to things, right? To very easily say yes to a comment or a stitch, but there's sort of this implicit like ability to say no as well, right? Like you're not sitting there like desperate to try to get, an airdrop and willing to do all this like fake behavior because they have so much social capital locked up in their brand that you're not gonna like, you can put out the bounty, right? But no one's going to engage with you on the influencer side unless you have a compelling thing. If you are targeting the right influencers, right? No one knows the value of an influencer brand better than that influencer themselves. So giving them more opportunities, and that truly means not just the ability to say yes, but also the ability to say no. It's like really at the core of the value prop for me, because then as the, as the marketer was sitting on the brand side, like mostly like this podcast, as long as it doesn't go too viral, I won't be too great of a target for Daisy. We'll see. We'll pump some clips and maybe I'll become an influencer.
Yeah.
But like that's the beauty of it for me, right? It's like the brand side's going to know that the influencer actually wanted to engage with them, because it's very easy to say no, right? Like their life isn't dependent on that $20. It's a great thing if they do it, but maybe skip an Air One smoothie one day because all the brands are coming up with bullshit, and that forces us to become better as well. So I think these are the interesting sort of flywheel network effects from Daisy that, like, it's very early days, obviously, but the moment you hear about it, anyone in advertising or marketing is going to see, I think, from first principles again, like the beauty of what this is becoming, is in the direction of becoming, and is already starting to like show the hints of genius behind it.
Yeah. And I agree. And in order for us to be successful, we have to think about the stack. It's not just one part of that stack. And so it is about creating the stack. That's what I was saying earlier as a Web2 founder, is that you have to figure out who to partner with in order to create the right stack. I think that's what's different about maybe Web 2 and Web 3, is that even though we're building on Web 2 rails, but you have to leverage the Web 3 stack. And that's the only way we're going to be able to get to where we're at. And that's the only way we're going to deliver to someone that's trying to spend the same dollars to get to the same audience that they filled the seats a year ago, and you have to retarget them again if they're going back on tour, if they're trying to get them back in the theater. That's just crazy that they have to continue to do that. And then it's the same thing as like another brand that told me that they have to spend they spent like 10K with the influencer to create content, and they end up getting the same audience that overlap with the creator that they spent 10K with like a month earlier. It's like they just hit the same audience twice, so they overspent 10K, and they said they hate that. That's what sometimes, and but mostly a lot of brands, that's the only option they have. And so we're here to solve that, and I think we're just, as I said, we're just getting started. We're looking forward to solving this with in conjunction with what you guys have in place and what you guys are building as well, which I know your roadmap is just as exciting as ours. So let's definitely get this for sure together.
Yeah. I always like to absolute banger podcast. I think people are gonna love it. I can already see the excitement around the clips. It's dropped a lot of heaters, but I always like to say is like these big tech companies and their data silos is like a large industrial monocrop farm, and the goal that we're trying to get to is to make the internet more like a healthy rainforest, right? And this is like the clearest example of just putting the creator at the center of influencer-based marketing. And now there's like so many cool things you could do, make it a lot more efficient, and make money with like the morally superior position, which is like rare in the history of technology, especially these days.
Yeah.
So super
Yeah.
excited.
Same. I'm pumped.
How do people I think people are going to be interested in talking to you about using Daisy, actually, because there's a lot of like consumer builders who follow us. How do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. So our website is daisypay.io. Our Twitter is daisypayapp. And I'm all about, I do this all the time publicly, is I was giving my TG handle. If you guys just hit me up, which is at Hollywood _Ray. Again, at Hollywood _Ray. That Hollywood's a nickname. That's for a future podcast later. I'll give you guys a story on that.
Look forward to it, brother. Yeah, absolutely heater. I think influencers definitely reach out to Ray. Any brand that has any sort of consumer focus, definitely reach out to Ray. And if you see clips of this podcast coming across your TikTok feed, just know Ray did that for us. That's the reason that you're seeing us. So shout outs Ray, Ian, Emily, the old Daisy team, for helping us out. But yeah, Ray, absolutely heater. Thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate the time.
No, thanks for having me. Thanks for your time as well, David and Hers. Always good seeing you.